Hey movie fans, so Spectre is the fourth installment in the Daniel Craig era of James Bond films, starting with Casino Royale. Now we have Spectre, and this more or less may be Daniel Craig's last James Bond if you believe his attitudes towards the franchise. Now this is coming off the heels of the highly successful and widely acclaimed 2012 hit Skyfall, which I thoroughly enjoyed and was actually, believe it or not, the very first Bond movie I ever saw. I later went back and reviewed them, but I just didn't grow up watching the James Bond movies, but now I really enjoy them. They're very entertaining movies. So how does Spectre hold up compared to Skyfall, other James Bond movies? Well, that's what we're here to find out today. And of course I had to get dressed up for the occasion, because why not? It's James Bond. So, to start off, this is basically Skyfall 2.0 in terms of the story elements and beats. It just plays out exactly like Skyfall, except, suffice to say, not as good as Skyfall. You got looks at James Bond past with some key details left out, leaving the viewer questioning, with a villain that we only see halfway through the movie that's rather underdeveloped, like Silva, and now with Franz, played by Christoph Waltz. Who, that's one of the positives and negatives in this film, is that all the villains in this movie are done incredibly well, with Dave Bautista playing Mr. Hinks or Jinx, something along those lines. More or less the stereotypical James Bond henchman of just the big guy that's just here to bruise and destroy. And he does it very, very well. The only problem is he doesn't get a lot of screen time, which is kind of a recurring theme with the villains. Same with Christoph Waltz's character as Franz. He was great and menacing, but he really wasn't in there that much. His entrance, when you see in that trailer, he comes in, the shadowiness covering his face, you don't really see him. That was well done, but after that point, we don't really get to see him enough. A lot of other factors playing. And there's another more political figure played by Andrew Scott, who, he's kind of the same element that was in Skyfall of saying that MI6 and the whole 00 program is outdated. Once again, saying that this is Skyfall 2.0, again, except inferior, but still rather enjoyable. I know it sounds like I'm hating on this film, so let's shift over to some positives. Daniel Craig can play this role in his sleep by now. He's really, really good at Bond, and this is the first time we've actually seen Bond have some humor. There's a lot of humorous elements to this movie. I'd say this is probably the funniest of all the Daniel Craig movies, and it felt like the most classic Bond, which at this point sounds a bit odd, because all the Daniel Craig movies up till this point have been more gritty and serious, taking key from the more Christopher Nolan style that's been developing over the past couple of years, ever since the success of The Dark Knight. This one takes it back a little bit with more humor and some crazy gadgets from Q once again, some homages with the car. There's a lot of good homages in this movie. Overall, a lot of the performances are really, really good. The Bond girl, played by Léa Seydoux in this movie, she is pretty solid, but I didn't buy their chemistry at all. Daniel Craig's and Léa Seydoux's chemistry was okay, but to me she felt just like every other Bond girl, except they try to make you think that she was more significant than all the other ones, which I don't really buy, because there's been so many of them, because it's Bond franchise. Also, this movie is wonderfully shot. The cinematography and soundtrack are just fantastic. The whole opening scene, it's all one shot basically. Like, you thought the Silva shot where he's talking about the rats in Skyfall is good. This one's a nice tracking shot of Bond basically going through a hotel and trying to assassinate someone. All one shot, and it's just a marvel to watch. The whole film is beautifully shot, great cinematography, and a great score done by Thomas Newman, who did Saving Mr. Banks, Shawshank Redemption, a lot of great films. So you know the music's going to be good. But we gotta harp back to the negatives. In this movie, we've seen all these story elements played out before, except done better. Christoph Waltz's character supposedly is the one that's been behind all the villains in Daniel Craig's lore so far, with Le Chiv from Casino Royale, whoever was in Quantum of Solace, because we're all trying to forget Quantum of Solace, or Silva from Skyfall. He's like, I was the one behind all that. And when you find that out, it's just kind of, because there really wasn't any build-up to it, and it just was ho-hum. And once again, he was an underdeveloped villain. He was just kind of there. He is a bit of a, without getting into spoiler territories, he's a front for something else, and that whole reveal was a little bit underwhelming. Like, I was expecting more. Now, I kind of could guess that reveal going into it, but it was still rather disappointing going, this could have been done a lot better. And I said before that the villains were incredibly underdeveloped, but a lot of scenes were like, I would have liked a little less exposition and a little more James Bond action. That's not to say the action wasn't great. When it's there, the action is fantastic. It's your stereotypical James Bond action. But in contrast to Skyfall or even Casino Royale, it's not up to that par. But that's not a bad thing. This movie is still a really fun time in the movies. So I'll give this a solid 7 out of 10. Not a bad movie. It's still a lot of fun. But in contrast to other Daniel Craig movies, this is just, it's good but not great. And if this is to be Daniel Craig's last James Bond movie, then I think it was going out on a high note. Well, what did you guys think about Spectre? Have you seen it? Have you not? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like what you see and want to see more, subscribe to the channel, or find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at 17 Movie Reviews. Stay sharp, movie guys and gals.